Boy, headhunter. What is up, everybody? Welcome to the Headhunter Hideout. I'm super excited today. I have Joe Mullings, who is the chairman and CEO of Mullings Group company. He has been featured in Forbes, CNBC, Business Insiders, Yahoo Finance, New York Post, and Monster. And honestly, if you don't know Joe and you're in the recruitment industry, I don't know where you've been. He's got a med tech recruitment agency that's killing it. They're just doing amazing things in the industry. And he's also a big inspiration for myself for producing content, producing high quality content. And so I'm really honored to have Joe with us and appreciate him being with us. And so Joe, why don't, for anyone who doesn't know you, which I'm guessing is, probably pretty rare, why don't you just give us a quick intro and how you got started in recruitment, and then we'll get into the conversation here.
You got it. Well, thanks for having me, first of all, Joel, and say hello to Sean for me as well.
I will.
So I got started in the headhunting business in 1989, December 2nd, 1989. I went to work for Management Recruiters International at the time, Sebastian Avosi and Bill Joes, two great guys. I knew I needed to serve an apprenticeship, so I did that for 2 years. And when they hired me, I did tell them I was going to hang for 2 years and then go start my own firm. I went to school as an engineer, University of Dayton, Ohio, and got out of there in '84. Spent a couple of years as an engineer before that, though. And about 2 years and 4 weeks to the day, I went out on my own, opened up my own firm down in Coral Gables, Florida. I partnered with my college roommate, Jim Weber, and those in the headhunting business will know Jim. He's probably the best in med tech. He still has his own firm in quality and operations. Probably has placed a few thousand people himself. And then built the firm up to what it is today. We're about 30 plus people, run rate of over 10 million a year. We've got our own media company, if you will. And we have expanded out to med tech and health tech, which I'm happy to go into if anybody's interested on really the consumer empowered market that's coming out with intelligent consumer devices that people are now going to be pushing into healthcare rather than pulled into it because they have a disease. So I love the industry. I love to challenge the industry. And you just need to realize it's about the candidate. You'll hear me use the word individual from here moving forward, because candidate to me is just a terrible word. They're individuals. And so it's all about the individual, because if you can get the individual to follow you, the companies will pay your fees and they will seek you out because the individuals trust you. So that's my background. 30 years, New York boy, Hicksville, New York, and down here and live in beautiful Palm Beach.
I love it. And I saw it too. Is it your 30-year anniversary? Was it earlier this month, or when was it?
Yeah. So it was middle of January. I didn't even know it. My team came to me, and it was my 30 year of starting the firm. It's my 32nd year in the business. Yeah.
Wow, man. Well, there's so much. I mean, we were just talking backstage, and there's so much that I feel like we could talk about. I'm curious to hear a little bit about kind of some of the changes that you've seen in the industry. But I know you're talking about challenging the industry, and obviously a big part of that I see is this digital transformation that's taking place with the recruitment agency world. So I'm curious to just hear how you got started with your own digital journey, and kind of how that's evolved, and then how you kind of see that evolving further as we go on. So yeah, I'd love to chat about that.
Yeah. So, it was 2015 maybe. I had a big contract with Google and Johnson & Johnson. We were building a really sophisticated surgical robot, and I had flown out. Google and J&J had interviewed something like 27 different companies, and they had 350 hires they had to make in Silicon Valley to build a surgical robot to rival Intuitive Surgical, which is a multi-billion-dollar company. So I went out there, we won the contract, and I'm sitting there, and they said, oh, by the way, you can't show the robot. You can't talk about the robot too much in detail. You can't show inside the four walls of Google because it was on the Google campus. And we want the best in the business out of Tesla, out of Facebook, out of all of the software companies. you still want this? I'm like, yeah, I got this covered. Yeah.
No pressure.
No pressure. Now, if you're a headhunter, to hire 300 people and assume you put 5 individuals into each role, and then assume, especially since Google and J&J, 5 interviews per position, you'll start doing the math backwards. That you're doing something like 15 interviews a day for 2 straight years. Not tenable. Yeah.
Yeah.
So I'm flying home and I'm thinking, how am I going to pull this off? How am I going to scale this off? And social media just came to mind. And I said, like, let's just start telling stories. I won't show the robot, and I won't be able to show you inside of Google and the R&D labs there, but I can certainly tell you the stories about what they're trying to do. And that came up, the construct of always talk about 4 things as a headhunter, whether you're doing social media or not, right? The market, the product or service in that market, the leadership, and the mission. So that became as the construct, the 4 pillars on how you tell stories. And that's what you do when you pitch too on the telephone, not just in video or even on your copy. And so I went home to my home office. I set up a little Sony camera in my home office. I made what I thought was a kick-ass video, direct to camera, on how you want to absolutely, take this. I brought it inside to my wife, and she goes, "You look like a damn moron. You're going to embarrass yourself."
Best feedback ever from the wife, right there.
She said, "Listen, call up your nephew Ryan. He just got out of Massachusetts Film School. Have him see if he can help you, because you are not going to ruin your career with that." And of course, I walked back out through the courtyard to my office, downtrodden and embarrassed. But as usual, she was right. So I called up Ryan, and Ryan came in. He came down, moved to Florida, brought in Christina, who was one of his friends and also teachers at the academy. And we kicked off from there with 2 little Sony cameras, 2 young people who didn't know what was not possible. And I had no training in that. And we scrambled around, and there's still great footage online on that. And Google and J&J gave us the thumbs up to create these great stories. I believe, and I need to verify it, we were the first recruiter with video on LinkedIn at the time. We were definitely in the alpha and the beta, and we posted those online, and we saw the impact it had. And then from there, we just kept on building and making, everybody did back in the day, stupid memes at the time, because that's what you did. Yeah. And, just continue to evolve. And, today we're a full production company of, in aggregate, probably 7,000 square feet. 10 employees. We've traveled the world with True Future. We're now getting hired, not even to do headhunting, but just to tell the digital stories about our clients. And, clearly it's a beautiful platform to just raise up the industry that you're in. So that's how we got started in the digital side. And it was only 5 years ago. We served that apprenticeship, and we made sure, we made sure that we learned it. It's really critical to understand that anybody can aim a camera. And so don't ever be afraid of that, like you're going to get beat out by a PR company. Headhunters in general are great storytellers if they're great headhunters, right? But they've been telling stories over the phone for most of their career. And so if I leave you with anything today, here's what your goal is. As a headhunter who's migrating over to digital, you've got 3 categories. Already, most good headhunters are subject matter experts, but they've only spread their subject matter expertise to the people they call every day. And if you really unwound a headhunter's desk, his or her desk is probably in the Pareto diagram to the same 500 people. So you're only reaching those 500 people with your subject matter expertise. The second you take that online, don't make it more complicated. All you want to do online is the same thing that you're teaching the people in your expertise on your desk, is you're now translating that to copy first. Don't go into video. Copy. Learn to write in those 1,300 characters on LinkedIn. Now what you've done is you take that subject matter expertise and you've scaled it to the 1,000 or 5,000 or 30,000 followers on LinkedIn. You've now become a leader, because now you're talking to people who never have heard from you before, or weren't even aware of you. And then eventually your Valhalla is to move up to be the voice of your industry, right? Not many. There's usually 1 or 2 voices in an industry, so to speak. I always aspired to be that in health tech and med tech. One day I want to get there. And then there could be 5 or 7 subject matter leaders. Yeah. But the importance is working on your copy, working on your writing. Don't overthink it, because once you get your copy down, your camera work will be so good because you'll know how to communicate in these sound bites that are so important. So subject matter expert, if you're a big biller, you're already there. Don't overthink it. Get a consultant, bring somebody online. Don't hire a social media expert that you're going to blow through money and you're going to get upset at yourself. Get somebody like these guys, and this is not an advertisement with Joel and the team. Get somebody who's been a headhunter who can then take you through that process. And then from there, you can amplify it based upon how much work you want to put in, and then you can get to be a voice. And then what happens, why is this important? It doesn't replace the phone. What it does is it moves the phone further down the activity chain. But when you pick up that phone, everybody knows you. When you pick up that phone, you have automatic gravitas. You start to get heavy inbound business then, inbound candidates, inbound hiring managers with JOs. So, but you have to be patient with it. Media will not replace the headhunter. Headhunters who use media will replace headhunters who do not. That you can bet on.
All right, man. It's crazy because I'm gonna have to do highlights from this live show, and I feel like that whole segment is just highlight and highlight and highlight. I'm curious, and we got a couple people that are saying hi as well, so I just want to get to them. We got Sean just says 2 times legend. Kevin says yo from Seattle. Kevin is kind of more up and coming on social media, and then we have our guy Adam. He said Beacon, but he meant to say Joel. This is my, and then Beacon, and then Adam just said, just with what you said, boom. And obviously, Adam's got a great thing going on with his podcast. Mm-hmm. He's got a great machine working, and he's seeing a lot of growth in his business this year. One question, I've got a couple of questions. I think the first one is, with everything that you said, and I know that you say this to a lot of the people that you consult with, what do you think that how much do you think overthinking and like overcomplicating with copy plays into the fact that it just stops people from doing it? Like why do you think that is, and how do you work around that psychology when you're consulting people?
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. Yeah, I've got quite a few people I consult with on this, and the first thing they do is they get wrapped around the axle, forgetting what their first job is to be a communicator. Not a grammatical expert. Don't proofread. Look, if you read my stuff, my grammar is atrocious. And typically I don't proofread. I will get up in the morning, I'll go work out, I'll think of something, and I generate 80% of my content 15 minutes before you see it posted. I think about it a lot. And I just rip it out, and invariably I'll proofread it after it's posted because I just want to get it out of my head.
Yeah.
So I share that because it's really important to understand you're a communicator. Here's a drill, everybody who's listening who's a headhunter. All you have to do, if you're looking for content, only spend your time unwinding the headlines. Get 10 headlines a week in your expertise of your industry. Read the article. Then unwind it as an expert headhunter on what does that article mean relative to your industry. Either somebody was bought, or there was an investment in there, or they went bankrupt, or they merged, or they released a new product. Now reverse engineer that out with your expertise on what does that mean to the job market relative to the market you work in. Because we lose sense of what we're great at. We're great at knowing where that career hockey puck is going to be eventually, if you're really a student of your business, in the companies we work for. And most of our individuals we work with, the candidates, they aren't looking at headlines like we look at them. They look at headlines as just as a consumer. We look at it as the opportunity to get a JO, right? A job order, an opening. And so if you start to unwind the headlines for the people who start to follow you, that is one of the best ways to just like lose all your challenges about creating content and just throw it out there. And don't worry about it being judged, because it's gonna be. But if you pull your punches when you know what you got is subject matter expertise and you actually have an intention to give, throw that out there. Don't put advertisements up about how many placements you make. Don't tell me what you billed last month. Nobody cares about that. Don't tell me how amazing your firm is. Take the firm of communicator via education, unwind the headlines, and then there's a little something I put out on LinkedIn. Please look, on YouTube, please look it up. It's called the 10-4-2 strategy. It shows you, just put Mullings 10-4-2 on YouTube. It shows you how to get in the inner circle of any hiring manager on the earth within probably 1 week. It's a lock. It's a lock. It's the best thing I ever hallucinated on I think it was like a Sunday morning afternoon in my garage gym. It's a lock. So check that out.
I love it. I love it. And definitely I'll post a link too in the comment section.
Cool. Thanks.
And I just saw it for everyone out there as well. I asked Joe earlier, I said, are you on Clubhouse? He said, no, I'm 18 hours a day, which, I'm questioning a lot of people who are spending a lot of time on there as well. But we were chatting and we had a conversation on Saturday morning on that platform. Joe's not on the platform. And somebody brought up the 10-4-2 strategy. And I was just laughing that, that to me, that's a sign that, that's what makes you a thought leader, when you're able to show up on other platforms without being on other platforms.
That's cool.
What about with like fear? Okay. Cause I know you mentioned that a little bit with like the judgment piece. How much do you think fear plays into content, and particularly with people that you're consulting that maybe been in the industry for a long time? Like, how much does the fear of being judged, or the fear of losing clients, the fear of putting yourself out there, do you see that playing in there? Like, I'd love to get your take on that.
Well, I think the stat that I got from LinkedIn was less than 0.5% of recruiters put content out there. Now, whatever their demotivation is, I'm not sure. But the flip side of it is, look at it on the other side, what the opportunity is there. So your competitors are not putting out content. So as long as you don't put out something that insults other people, it's all upside. And again, your content should, here's what I do. I have my book with me. I got it over on the table there. I keep a book with me everywhere I walk, and I have Post-it notes. Think about the conversations that you have every single day. And you're talking about either a salary negotiation, a relo, thank you, Lily, a relo, any of that stuff. What you want to do is, as soon as you hang up that phone or you're in the middle of it, you want to write down the conversation you had. Because what you did is, when you hung up the phone, that was gold. I wish I could can that. And so what I will do is I will take that phone call. And again, at my salary negotiation, or I just had a guy say no. I still work a desk all day too. I had a guy turn something down today with a great client in Boston. Everybody thought it was dead. We went back to him. We had a very specific conversation. It was something I had not spoken about in a couple of years. I wrote it down. It'll be a posting next week. So your content, you're developing it all week on your desk if you're a headhunter. And we're saying things that nobody else hears. So if you take Unwind the Headlines, you take 10-4-2, and you take your Post-it notes and just jot them down every week, there's your content for the rest of the week. And if you take an education mindset, man, it's impossible not to have content. Forget about the video camera. Spend 120 days just writing, commit to it 4 days a week to post on LinkedIn, and you'll get better and better. Now, I'm not going to fib. There's a dude up in Chicago who's a headhunter. I'm not going to say his name, although I should. He wished me that I would die. He wished me that my ICD would stop working. This is the second time he did it for me. He is so bent up. I've had to block him 2 times. With all the lovely words I get online, like, he's the only one I think about. Look, I'm thinking about him right now. So yeah, you're not going to be able to ignore the haters or the people who have every shot to just go right by you or unfollow you or just keep scrolling, but they feel compelled to have to call you out. Like, oh man. So, and you won't lose clients over it. In fact, your clients, I think, will be appreciative, because what you're doing is you're lifting up the industry. You're again, teaching mindset, and then eventually you never know where you'll go to. Because in the beginning, 100% of my content was purely educational around the medtech industry: laser imaging, guidance, robotics, heart valves, implantable hearts, neurotransmitters. But over the years, I gravitated to what I love to do, is to inspire and teach. So my content went from subject matter expertise on exact technologies to now it's only about 20% of that. And the rest of it is pushing into the recruiting world, trying to motivate recruiters to think other ways and motivate companies to think about creating a hiring brand other ways. And then on the inspirational side, which I've always been sort of a coach anyway. So,
yeah. No, I love that. And I noticed too, interestingly enough, a lot of people, and I'm on a lot of these LinkedIn conversations as well. Um, a lot of people are downplaying the company page and they're saying that the company page, nothing's going on with it. And you have a great following on your company page and you also get great engagement. So from a company page kind of a strategy, is that like, what's your strategy with the company page? I'd love to kind of hear how you're developing that, because you're getting some, I went on there, I saw a post with like 250 likes, which I mean, for a company page, it's amazing. And it was a link away from LinkedIn as well. So I'd love to get your thoughts on that. And if you think, people should be using company pages.
Yeah, I think you want to triage it though, right? So I would always go with the individual page first, because LinkedIn is really driven around the individual. After that, the company page, and the strategy we use on the company page is I've got Matt Kaufman, Giovanni Lauricella, Holly Scott, myself, Wes. I've got a lot of people who put out great content. And so what we do typically on the company page is we have a team inside that will just review what got the best content on the individual pages, take that content, and if it was an article that was written or it was a video, rework the copy, and then put it on the company page. So we'll do that. But now remember, we've got a pretty good menu to pull from. So we've got True Future. We've got something called TMG Pulse. Look that up. That's very interesting. It's a news aggregator. It's sort of like Huffington Post for our industry. It scrapes, I think, like 40-something different sites for news in the medtech industry every night. And we custom built that. So we're able to pull from a bunch of places. And I think we've got 40,000 something followers on our company page. And we think that's just as important. But I would, from a resource perspective, concentrate on yourself. And then if you're running a firm and you've got 2 or 3 or 4 people putting things out, then go ahead and take the best of that week, because that's data telling you that the public likes it. So then share it with a larger group.
No, I love that. And you have you're coming up to 50,000 followers on that. But I was just curious, because a lot of times, like I'm with you as well. Like I think especially if you got limited resources, the personal page is a great place to test things. So when you're bringing new people on to your company as well, like, are you teaching them how to create content? Are you building that in the schedule? And one of the questions I hear a lot is like, how do we keep our people accountable? So I'd love to kind of hear your take on that and how you're doing that. And you using KPIs, like how are you keeping people accountable for content? I'd love to hear your take on that.
So great question. We never force social on anybody. The one thing we do we haven't kept phone time for probably 2 decades. We don't keep number of calls in the office. Paz has been in my office. There's a bunch of TV screens on the wall. The only metrics we track are LinkedIn. Followers gained this month, regional location of the followers, titles of the followers. We don't even track our production board on those screens. We figure if those metrics continue to grow appropriately with the right followers and the right engagement, that will declare itself in production. It's a little more complex than that, but I'm just pointing that out from a KPI. When you join us, the KPI on social that we want is if you have great content, but you don't have a distribution channel, you have nothing. And so what we do is when you have a new recruiter come on, the KPI on social is how many followers did you increase on a monthly basis over your first 6 months? And we're looking for anywhere, I'd have to check with Christina, between 500 and 1,000 followers. You need to increase it every single month when you come in. Because then once you put content out, it will be seen appropriately and leveraged so you can move from that subject matter expert to that subject matter leader. So too many people get fixated on content when they need to, on the other side, be fixated on building up their followers so their distribution channel is getting that content out. In our organization, we have an approach of, if you want to develop content, we will show you how. We have our 4 pillars. We have training programs on that. But if you want to do video, we require you to write aggressively for at least 90 to 120 days. And we'll have it critiqued, and we'll explain to you why you want to grab her up front, why you want to have one line up front, leave a space, and then break it down into little chunks. Nobody wants to read anything more than 4 lines in a paragraph, and then leave them something amazing to think about as you go out the back door. Don't ever paint yourself into a corner. Rarely will you get something that's an absolutism in life in general. So using words like "it is going to be interesting to watch," "I wonder if," "have we ever thought about," right? I also am not a fan of asking a question for engagement. That's just a stylistic thing. I think we're smarter than that. I think we want to force ourselves to be more creative than that. It's a cheap way out of trying to get engagement. If you're not writing well enough, challenge yourself to write better rather than end up with some corny question to drive engagement. And nobody pays attention to that anyway. So that's sort of our beginners when you first join our firm.
I love that. I love that. And we've got a couple of people saying hi here. Tony just says, "What's up, Joe and Joel?"
What's up, Tony?
And then Adam here, he just said targeted connections. And I didn't make that up, Joel. And that's a cool thing with Adam as well. I mean, he's got a very targeted niche of people that he's got, so he doesn't necessarily have a huge follower count. But to your point, follower count matters, connections matter, but they've got to be the right connections, and it's building that audience up strategically. So I love that you pointed out that you look at like regions, and I'm guessing that industry and title, because I think a lot of people, they get too caught up in, hey, and I'll just connect with anybody, or I'll just kind of connect with random people. So I love that you brought that up. And then Tom here just says,
right? I'm like, there's a difference. You can have followers, you can have fanatics, and yeah. I would take 500 fanatics over 10,000 followers all day long.
I'm right there with you. And Tom just said, finally, someone said it, and they agree. Now, I will say, like, on a lot of my content, I go back with this because I like to just play around, and I mean I like to experiment, and so I actually recently I instead of saying agree, I said concur, and that one actually did okay. But I think to your point, it's not just throwing that in to try and get the cheap engagement, but obviously a lot of people who are growing on LinkedIn too, they're in engagement groups, and they're just saying great post, great post, great post. If you're looking to build strategically from a business sense, you've got to have that targeted audience, and you're wanting to engage that targeed audience with
it's called social media for a reason. It's meant to be social, right? I'm not saying you shouldn't ask a question. Yeah. What I'm saying is have you really challenged yourself with what you're about to put out? And if a question at the end of that is totally appropriate, but it's not a go-to because you don't want to think any harder, one of the beautiful things about the LinkedIn platform is it's by far probably 3x the intelligence factor of any other social platform. So it doesn't suffer sophomoric behavior, and it shouldn't, and it never should. Now, is posting social things on there once in a while cool? Yeah, I'm okay with that. Is political stuff good? No, I don't think so. But I really think that you've got to respect the intelligence of your population on there, and give them things to think about, and give them things to know that you're asking really interesting questions, and that will drive dialogue in itself. But I think insulting with, just for engagement, putting, surveys on there, or what think you? Well, if you ask me what think you, and I really put a thoughtful post together, I'm totally okay with that. But if you're just, trying to get followers up, or, thumbs up, or whatever they are, likes, I don't think you're going to have a long career in becoming a subject matter leader, and adding value to your platform.
I love it. I love it. And yeah, I mean, I'm curious. Okay, so let's say if you're new to the industry and you're thinking about putting out content, obviously it can be harder to position yourself as an SME in an industry. So if you're 2 years in and you're recruiting engineers, obviously you're going to have some insight. And I also think it's fascinating that your background is engineering as well, because that obviously helps because you can speak the language. But let's say you don't have a specific, expertise, and you're still wanting to put out content. Like, how do you kind of guide that, and how do you have people position themselves?
So, the profile you just gave me, that's fair, right? You probably shouldn't be spending a lot of time on LinkedIn putting out content if you have less than a year or a year and a half in search, unless, of course, you came out of that very specific industry and you know it in and out, and then you just jumped over to search in that industry. That's a different qualifier. But let's say you're 2 years in. Well, you have probably, conservatively speaking, had 20 conversations a day over 400 days in 2 years. What is that? 8,000 conversations around careers. You probably have spoke more about careers in your industry than anybody else. And then you've also seen mid-caps, startups, big strategics, and you've seen the dynamics going on. I'm also assuming that we're talking to people who take this profession heart attack serious, right? Not people passing through or for lifestyle, but like, this is what you want to do. You want to make $1 million, $2 million, $3 million a year as a headhunter, which is very doable. Well, that's why I go back to unwinding the headlines. If you can take a headline and then you can look at that headline and sit back and really, the last 2 weekends I've done brain dumps from white pieces of paper because I'm getting ready for 2 big keynotes, and I do a lot of mapping. I'm an engineer. And if you can then take that headline and start to reverse engineer it to, okay, what does that mean to the marketing people, the sales people, the engineers, the supply chain? What does it mean to the software engineers? What does it mean to cybersecurity? Who are the competitors in there? And now start to map that out. You then can take that headline and over the next week, unwind it for salespeople, for marketing people, for quality people. And because you know how the companies work and how your industry works, and you know how to speak to that candidate population of quality sales, marketing, reg, whatever it is, do that. You're an expert already. And then just use words like it will, it could, it'll be interesting to watch. If the whole Robinhood thing that's going on right now, well, it'll be interesting to see what's happening in other similar sort of analog businesses or online. I can guarantee you, if you put in Robinhood and you put in Charles Schwab, there's going to be a conversation going on in there right now. And if you're in that market, you can unwind those 3 or 4 articles and start to have that converge on a thought from a headhunter's perspective in careers that you could then start to parlay into being an SME and an SML.
I love it. And I saw those posts as well. And those posts, I think one of those did amazing as well, which goes to show, I think it's putting out that content too that speaks to the audience you're trying to reach, which I think is a big mistake. And I know Tom, he just said, you mentioned not insulting anyone. Thoughts on calling out the industry bad practices? So I'm guessing that's recruitment. It's no surprise if a recruiter posts anything about ghosting, they'll get engagement. Is there any substance to that? So what's your thought? Because that's been a big trend, the kind of attacking the ATS, ghosting.
Right. That's an easy one, and there's nothing wrong with that. But how about, that's an interesting one. So if we took ghosting or the ATM, so I got hit up the other day with somebody, is AI going to kill us? I'm like, dude, first of all, if you really understand AI and algorithm and resume reading, right, you've got to train that algorithm, right? And then to train that algorithm, you need the perfect resume, or you need the perfect sets of resume, but it can't be a made up resume because then it's a biased data set that they're trying to pull this from. And see, this is the way your brain has to work when you start to look at, these applicant tracking systems. And then it still comes down to the human interaction. And think about who's reviewing the resumes that come out of that. There's some college intern. It's not a VP of HR reviewing those. It's like some college intern who's just getting something spit out. And right. And so on the ghosting side, as an example, you can always get, burn her, she's a witch. That's an easy one, right? But are you really having people go, wow, I didn't think about ghosting that way? And so then I might go after, ghosting is primarily the responsible of a CEO who's got a bad hiring process in place. And so maybe CEOs should have 20% of their bonuses built upon the candidate or the individual's job satisfaction in engaging with their company, right? And so with that, maybe HR shouldn't be responsible for headhunting or recruiting, because recruiting is an invasive, aggressive business if you have it in your company. And HR, they're farmers and gatherers. But 60 years ago, somebody said, dump talent acquisition in HR because it has to do with people. And they're two totally different mindsets. Well, maybe have a conversation about that. Look at the sickness, but look back to why the sickness occurred systemically if you want to create great content. So like challenge yourself to say, why does ghosting happen? Because if it goes back to the core, it's the wrong people running the talent access business. HR is undertrained, under-resourced, overworked. It's not their fault. It's the CEO who has not realized that their hiring brand could be the most important brand, more than their brand on their product out in the industry. Because it's the person who's making the product that's more important than the product, ultimately. And so when you start to unwind talent acquisition challenges in the marketplace, it usually will come back to lack of insight. CEOs have no idea. Vice presidents have no idea how to design a hiring process. Therefore, they don't give their HR group the tools in order to do it effectively. And those tools being training or hiring the right person to realize it's two different sides of the brain. It's a hunter-gatherer mentality. So yeah, I'm not a big fan of bashing things for the sake of the crowd frenzy. I'm a fan of talking about what the problem is and then intelligently unwinding. And then those are the people you want following you, is the people like, look what he or she did there. That's clever. I'm going to see what they say next week on another subject in our industry. So that would be my guidance.
Well, that's your response right there. Mind blown. But I think, obviously the vanity metrics and all of that stuff plays into content. But the question I get a lot is, how do you develop that inbound lead strategy and how do you do that? And it's putting out that quality content that makes people think. And at the end of the day, I'm guessing most of the people that you want to reach probably aren't hyper LinkedIn users. They probably go on LinkedIn, maybe daily, twice daily, but they're looking for quality. So if you're just posting, kind of the fluff, you might get 50,000 views. I get 50,000 views on some of my content, but I found like the content that calls out, recruitment and marketing, those posts don't actually do that well, but they generate the most leads. So I love that. So okay, so if you're looking at the industry from 5 years from now, I know one of the things you said earlier was content like huts up the use of the phone. So how do you see the phone playing, or like what role do you see the phone playing within our industry? And like how quickly do you think people need to adapt? Like, do you see if people don't make that switch to digital versus phone, like how long do you think people really have within the industry, given some of the shifts that we're seeing with people in the workforce?
Yeah, I think if you're planning on being in the industry for another 5 or 6 years and not making much of a move over to at least some sort of digital transition, you're okay. I want you to think about this though. So the businesses that are doing well, let's go outside headhunting. All the businesses that are doing well in any industry, even in the middle of COVID, are data forward, are digital forward, no matter what they do. The food industry's gone there with this whole COVID, situation. The way cars are sold, digital forward, right? Everything for the most part is sitting on this. And all this does is represent a reduction of friction of communication and engagement. So let's just take that there. So therefore, all of the companies that are going to be market leaders in their space, if they're not already digitally oriented, they themselves are going to be out of business. So if you're a person who is not going to be digitally oriented, the odds of the companies that are winning trying to find you are not going to find you. And then therefore the companies that are not digitally oriented are going to very quickly be flattening out or even declining and have no money for headhunting because we're not cheap, right? And so if you just think about it that way, is the organizations that are going to be hiring people are going to be looking for a digitally progressive partner in the business. And it's going to have to be evidence-based. Now, do you have to be like this? No, you don't have to be like this. I know for a fact there's no search firm in the world even close to our universe, but push us off. We should not be considered a benchmark to aspire to be, right? Is if you are working in an industry and you are not pursuing a digital relevance on how you do business, you are not going to appeal to the companies that are going to continue to be growing and gaining market share year after year. So just think about it that way. There's no way that these, pick your industry expertise, they are absolutely looking for evidence. I can't find you on LinkedIn, or if I find you on LinkedIn, you haven't posted in 6 months. I mean, there's not many companies that don't advertise or create relevancy or show their expertise. We don't even have to send out pitch decks anymore because we have demonstrated our expertise online every day. People don't even ask for the slide deck anymore. They just say, send me a fee agreement. I mean, that's an extreme right now, but that's what I'm talking about is you demonstrate your relevance. And hiring managers or candidates, remember that, is those individuals who are active in the marketplace are on LinkedIn. And if you put out content good enough, their first stop every morning is going to be checking out your feed. We hear that a lot. Like, dude, I can't wait to get on every morning and see what you're putting out next, right? Because it's industry related or it's personally development related. So I hope that answers your question. Is if you're going to just want to bill $100,000 to $200,000 a year from home, you're probably going to be fine for 5 or 6 years. But I think those firms that are doing $1 million, $2 million, $10 million, $15 million, if they are not all bought in, I think there's a very, very good chance they become irrelevant within 2 to 3 years.
Well, I'm 100% with you there, and yeah, there's so many different directions I'd love to go. I know usually I kind of wrap the show up at about 45 minutes, and everything you've said has just been super high value. I think anybody who's listening out there, it's clear that on the headhunting side, obviously you've built an amazing business, but on the media side as well. And I mean, I can just look behind you and see the studio. But I would just tell people, like, if you're not at, obviously not everybody has that level, but it's thinking in that direction. And we were talking about this before, you started in a journey at a certain point and you just went for it. And now we're seeing, years later, the fruits of that original sowing. And I think for a lot of people, they can look at somebody who's doing something really well at where they're at, and you just need to start now, because otherwise for 5 years, you're going to look again and you're going to see more people that have adopted it. And the only difference is you start something, you're consistent with it. So much value there. I appreciate it. I like to end these shows because obviously most of the people who are watching this are headhunters. And one of the questions I've been asking recently is just to that 1 or 2 people out there who's just starting out, they're in a really unusual period. We're obviously still in a pandemic, but they're just questioning whether or not they should be in this industry. Like, what would your advice be to them? And like, if you could talk to yourself, when you started in the industry, what would you leave them with? Yeah.
I mean this from the bottom of my heart. We are moving into the golden years of recruiting. Why? The workforce, the world of work, more in the last 12 months, I said 24 months, more has changed in the last 12 months than the last 12 years in talent access. Let's just, in the world of work, let's forget about headhunting. There's a split going on right now between those coming out, and we see all these businesses, all these practices, all these methodologies clearly going to be successful moving forward, and others that are still at risk. Those are going to have to be staffed. Most of them revolve around technology, the high growth organizations, whether you're making electric cars, whether you're making apps on a phone, whether you're making consumer products, intelligent consumer products, health related products, whatever they are. Over the next 2 to 3, 4 years, you're going to be able to get your legs about you. Why? Because right now, human resources still has not been reimagined. What human resources is going to be doing over the next 2 to 3 to 4 years are going to be environmental, health and safety issues in-house, OSHA, managing the onboarding of employees. Think about a mixed use workforce between contractors as well as full-time employees. So I would really look at getting into the contractor business. They are going to have zero time to go through the classic way that they attract talent, job postings, waiting for resumes to come in, onboarding. That's going to all be outsourced. It's going to be a cost of business moving forward. That means headhunters. Now, is the headhunting business going to be $10,000 engagement, 30% fee transactionally moving forward? I don't think so. I don't think all of it's going to go away. But I do think that how you think about partnering with clients, how you think about charging them, how you start to become a talent access expert. Do you want a contractor to fill that, Mrs. Hiring Manager? Do you want a full-time employee to handle that, Mrs. Hiring Manager? You've got to have a full solution in your talent access sort of organization, even if you're a one-desk office. But I think the next 24 to 36 months are going to be the most amazing time in the business. And you are going to have a digital component to it, because it's the only way you're going to be able to reach out and scale your sort of touch points with the individuals in the marketplace. So listen, mark my words. We have seen it. We had a record-breaking 2020. And I think a lot of it was, I said it years ago to Adam, to Paz, I'm like, companies that build their brand, when you go into a crisis, come out first out of that crisis. And if somebody can dig up that footage, and it's never held more true in headhunting. We blew out our numbers by 28% from the year before, which were another blowout year. And we've already done, I think we're at $1 million in the first 5 weeks of this year. And we're great headhunters. Don't get me wrong. My team is amazing. I also attribute a lot of that to the digital use of amplifying our great headhunters. So listen, golden years ahead, bet on it. Absolutely bet the farm on it, because what else are you going to do anyway?
I love it, man. Well, I appreciate your time. I appreciate you hopping on here. I'd love to get you on again in the future. I'd actually love to try and coordinate, even to get Shawn and Paz on here as well, and just talk about a lot of the branding stuff, because I think it just especially for our industry, the more the better. But I appreciate you hopping on. And anyone who's out there, if you don't follow Joe on LinkedIn, go follow him. Follow the company page, follow the YouTube channel, just follow him and learn. And we'll drop those links too in the comments. So I appreciate it again, Joe, and everyone else. We'll be back next Monday with another guest, and we'll announce that on Friday. Appreciate you guys all out there. And now we saw Tom. Shawn was there as well. So Shawn, great to see you. Ken said great info. Great to see you as well, Ken. And then Paz, Tony, Kevin, Jay, great to see all you guys. So appreciate it, Joe, and we'll talk soon.
Thanks.